The night shift started like it always did. 3 workers walked in on camera. Only one badge ever logged out. Management blamed a glitch. Payroll said the others never left. Lockers stayed full. Years went by. Then an inspection team opened a sealed pit that shouldn't exist. Subscribe to the channel if you like the video, and click on the bell icon to get more true crime stories. The factory stood just outside town limits, surrounded by scrubland and rusting rail lines. During the day it was loud, crowded, and closely monitored. At night, the building felt abandoned despite being operational. Long corridors stretched between processing zones. Old warning lights blinked even when nothing was running. The air carried a constant metallic odor that never fully dissipated. On a Tuesday night in late October, 3 contract workers were scheduled for the overnight shift. Each had been hired within the past year. None had permanent status. Their assignments rotated frequently, often without explanation. That night, all 3 were reassigned to Zone C, one of the oldest sections of the plant. Zone C handled chemical runoff and metal waste in earlier decades. By the time of the disappearances, most of its systems were outdated but still active. Renovation plans existed on paper, though no work had started. Access was limited. Fewer cameras covered the area. Supervisors rarely entered unless required. Security footage showed the workers entering through the east access door shortly before midnight. Their movements appeared routine. Each carried standard protective gear and personal items. No one else entered Zone C on camera afterward. Shortly after 2 a.m., production data from that section stopped transmitting. Sensors went offline. Control room staff assumed equipment malfunction. Maintenance logged the issue for follow-up. Operations continued elsewhere in the plant. When the morning shift arrived, the 3 workers were gone. Their stations showed no sign of disruption. Tools remained laid out. One paper cup still held warm coffee. Lunch bags sat beneath the workbench. None of the workers had clocked out. Management reviewed the situation internally and reached a quick conclusion. Contract workers frequently left jobs without notice. Payroll discrepancies reinforced the theory. Badge data showed irregularities, suggesting system failure rather than human absence. By early afternoon, families began calling. None of the workers had returned home. Phones rang unanswered. One worker had failed to pick up a child from daycare. Another missed a scheduled shift at a second job. Neighbors reported empty apartments. No luggage was missing. Local police opened missing persons cases. Investigators were told the factory had no reason to believe a crime occurred. Badge logs were provided. Select security footage was released. Supervisors stated the workers had been dissatisfied with their assignments. Zone C was described as partially restricted due to safety upgrades. Certain areas were said to be inaccessible pending renovation. Inspectors were assured there were no known hazards requiring emergency attention. OSHA records at the time showed the facility in compliance. The explanation settled quietly. Vulnerable workers. Unstable employment. Night shift isolation. The idea that they left voluntarily took hold without formal confirmation. Weeks passed. Financial records showed no activity. No travel alerts were triggered. No credible sightings emerged. Families pushed for deeper investigation, but evidence remained thin. The case slowed then stalled. Within a year, Zone C was shut down entirely. A concrete-lined pit once used for chemical runoff was sealed and marked decommissioned. Updated site maps removed it entirely. Renovation plans changed. Ownership shifted. Institutional memory faded. 16 years later, the factory reopened under a new name. During a routine OSHA safety audit, an inspector noticed inconsistencies between original blueprints and current documentation. A pit appeared in early schematics that no longer existed on paper. Its removal had never been properly logged. Access was requested. Management delayed approval. When the seal was finally breached, the disappearance of 3 night shift workers took on a different meaning entirely. The pit sat beneath several layers of poured concrete, thicker than required for standard decommissioning. OSHA inspectors noted the depth immediately. This wasn't a surface seal. It was containment. The kind used when reopening something would cost more than leaving it buried. Once the concrete was breached, the smell came first. Stale air trapped for years without circulation. Work stopped while ventilation equipment was brought in. The opening was widened just enough to lower a camera. The first footage showed standing water and rusted metal supports. Then the lens tilted. Something pale reflected back. The inspector halted the descent. Local authorities were notified. The site was locked down within hours. What was initially reported as a documentation discrepancy became a potential crime scene. The factory's new owners claimed no knowledge of the pit's contents. Records from the previous company were incomplete. Several storage servers had been wiped during the ownership transfer years earlier. When investigators finally entered the pit, they found evidence that contradicted every assumption made 16 years earlier. Personal protective equipment lay scattered near the bottom. Hard hats, gloves, boots, 3 sets. All consistent with factory-issued gear from the period of the disappearances. Serial numbers matched purchase logs from that year. None had been reported missing. Further inspection revealed something worse. The pit had not been abandoned at the time it was sealed. The concrete had been poured after items were already inside. Tool marks along the walls suggested hurried work. Fresh pour lines indicated the seal had been reinforced more than once. There were no official incident reports. No spill logs. No emergency shutdown notices from that week. Production records showed normal output for months after the night the workers vanished. Investigators widened their scope. Former supervisors were located. Several declined interviews. Others claimed limited memory. One former safety manager admitted Zone C had been flagged internally years earlier for structural instability. Cracks had formed along the pit walls. Repairs were deemed too expensive. According to internal emails recovered from an archived backup, shutting down the area entirely would have triggered mandatory reporting and prolonged inspections. Temporary fixes were approved instead. The pit remained active far longer than regulations allowed. Attention turned to the night shift schedule. The 3 missing workers had not been randomly assigned. Each had reported minor safety concerns in the weeks before their disappearance. One had filed a complaint about unusual vibrations near Zone C. Another mentioned chemical odors outside normal parameters. None of the complaints reached OSHA. The report stopped abruptly. Badge data revealed something else. Although only 1 badge had clocked out, 3 exit attempts were logged at different doors. All failed. System errors were cited at the time. No technician ever verified the malfunctions. Investigators theorized an accident during the shift. But the timeline didn't fully align. Sealing the pit would have required authorization, materials, and hours of work. That couldn't be done quietly during an active production cycle, unless the plant never actually stopped running. Former night shift employees were interviewed. Several described a pattern. When Zone C alarms sounded, supervisors instructed workers to stay put. Maintenance handled it. Documentation followed later. Questions were discouraged. One former worker recalled seeing concrete trucks arrive overnight on multiple occasions. The deliveries were logged as structural reinforcement. No details were provided. The final piece came from a retired engineer who had overseen waste systems decades earlier. He recognized the pit immediately. It wasn't just for runoff. It had been designed as a containment failsafe in case of catastrophic structural failure. A place meant to hold something temporarily, not permanently. As investigators prepared to remove remaining debris from the pit, a forensic technician noticed markings along one wall. Scratches. Repeated. At shoulder height. Not consistent with equipment damage. Consistent with movement. Forensic teams worked in stages. The pit was drained first. Water samples were collected and tested for chemical contamination. Results showed trace solvents consistent with factory runoff, but something else appeared in the analysis. Organic material. Degraded, but present in concentrations that shouldn't have existed in an empty containment structure. As debris was removed, the shape of the pit became clearer. It wasn't uniform. One side sloped inward, reinforced with older steel beams. The other had been retrofitted with concrete panels bolted into place. The design suggested modification after initial construction. Near the reinforced wall, investigators found fabric fragments caught beneath a collapsed support. The material matched factory-issued uniforms from the year of the disappearances. Fibers were embedded in dried concrete residue, indicating they had been there before the final seal cured. The implication was unavoidable. An accident alone could explain a fall. It could explain panic. It could not explain delayed sealing, reinforced containment, or missing documentation. Attention shifted to who had authority that night. Shift logs showed a skeleton supervisory crew. 1 floor manager. 1 safety officer. Both were promoted within a year of the incident. Both left the company shortly after the factory changed ownership. One had since died. The other had relocated out of state. Emails recovered from a forgotten backup drive provided context. Discussions about operational continuity. Concerns over regulatory exposure. References to containment solutions framed as temporary but never revisited. There was no directed mission. No explicit instruction. The language remained careful. Corporate. Designed to protect rather than explain. Investigators reconstructed the likely sequence. A structural failure occurred in Zone C during the graveyard shift. The pit, already compromised, gave way. At least one worker fell in. Others followed, either trying to help or attempting escape. Alarms may have triggered briefly, then gone silent. Shutting down the plant would have required reporting. Reporting would have brought inspectors. Inspectors would have uncovered years of deferred maintenance. The choice wasn't between safety and danger. It was between exposure and concealment. Concrete deliveries were scheduled overnight. Logs were altered. Badge data failures went uncorrected. The pit was sealed in stages to avoid drawing attention. Renovation plans became cover. Over time, the story simplified. Workers quit. Records faded. The building outlasted the truth. Families were notified of the findings only after identification became possible. DNA analysis confirmed what had been suspected for months. The remains belonged to the 3 missing workers. No criminal charges were filed. Statutes of limitation had expired. Key decision-makers were gone. Corporate liability dissolved through mergers and asset sales. Fines were issued. Violations documented. Statements released expressing regret without responsibility. The factory was ordered to shut down permanently. When the site was finally demolished, crews found additional sealed areas not listed in any records. None were opened. The cost outweighed the benefit. Environmental remediation focused on surface soil. Deep containment was left undisturbed. Today the land sits empty. Developers avoid it. Locals don't park near it. At night, the area stays dark despite nearby construction. The official explanation cites contamination risk. Former employees describe something else. A place where silence was cheaper than accountability. A system that rewarded compliance over caution. 3 workers vanished during a routine shift. The building kept operating. And the pit did exactly what it was designed to do.